Welcome back to the Tool Crib. Today we are going to be looking at the Victorinox Cybertool L. And this was loaned to the channel by outside the target demographic, who actually sent me several of his Victorinox knives to review. Much appreciated, because not a single one of them I had even held before, let alone owned. So this is my first experience with a couple of the Cybertools and with the Hunter XT. Many thanks, sir. Let's get into the specs of this particular multi-tool, and then we'll go through the numerous features that this thing has to offer. The overall weight on the Cybertool L is about 6.7 ounces, or about 190 grams. This is going to be a 91 millimeter frame, and that's going to translate to 3 9/16 of an inch in overall length. The width on this one, this is one of the wider tools that that Victorinox produces. This is 1.25 inches wide, or about 32 millimeters, and the thickness is right at an inch, or about 25 millimeters, 25.4 actually. This is a very close in overall size and function to the ever popular SwissChamp, and that's a knife that a lot of people know. So as far as overall footprint, the length, width, all of that stuff is going to be virtually identical. And the Cybertool L weighs just a tick higher than the SwissChamp. And we're going to bring the SwissChamp back in because this is real close in tool set as well. And we'll just give it a little comparison of that. So let's get into the tool set of the Victorinox Cybertool L. One of the tricks that outside the target demographic does is on his outer scale tools, he puts reflective paint, different color reflective paint on each of his implements so he can tell which is which. And that's a neat little trick that he does. Let's get started with the knives. So first of all, you have the little pin blade. Same thing that you're going to get on the SwissChamp and in a variety of different other knives, and then the main blade on it as well. Now, we talk about this a lot with Victorinox, that their steels are a little softer, but they are a lot more rust resistant than what you get with competitors' knives. Benefit of being softer, obviously, is you can sharpen them up a lot quicker. Then the next tool over is a file. The file, it's actually a file and a metal saw. So they have their single cut, their cross cut pattern, and then the tooth pattern on here is a metal saw. And actually that will work as a little fingernail cleaner as well out there on the tip, because it's not real sharp. The saws, or excuse me, the files on Victorinox knives are really good. I actually like the Leatherman's file just a little bit better because of the type of work that I do in metal industry. The diamond coated file comes in more handy for me than a wood file does. But the metal saw on here is really aggressive. It's one of the key things that Victorinox will have over Leatherman. And then the next tool is their saw. And their saw on all their knives just works exceptional. On all their knives, or on all their saw blades, it's going to be thicker at the cutting edge, and obviously they have a really thin spine, but it's actually a really stable saw, and it cuts through stuff really easily. Now, here's one area that the Leatherman has just a touch of an advantage over the Victorinox because of the tooth pattern. The Leatherman saws, I think, for me personally, are just slightly more aggressive. That's not to say this is bad. This is nowhere near a bad saw. This is a really great saw, actually. Just while Victorinox wins just slightly for most people with the file, in the saws is where I think Leatherman holds a little bit of an advantage. Here's one advantage that this Victorinox definitely has, though, except for the case of the Surge, in my opinion, but that's we'll leave that for another time. They're 91 millimeter scissors. The scissors on these things are fantastic, and I've said it on many different occasions, but it bears repeating that this is probably the best size EDC scissor that I know of in the 91 millimeters. The downside to them is that I feel like that spring is a little lightweight, but you can get replacements for it, and over time they'll start getting a little sticky. That's the only caveat. You know, it's the only downside that I see to this scissor, but the scissors themselves are exceptional scissors. The next tool over, and this, because this is a Cybertool, I said this about the Cybertool M that outside the target demographic wanted me. I think that the pliers really work well in this particular type of tool. I don't like the little pliers and Victorinox knives. I think that it just adds bulk and weight to something that is pretty much useless, except for the case of what this knife is made for. So this is more geared towards the tech industry, and I can definitely see the need to have a little pair of pliers, this little, I can see that, and I think this is well placed in this particular tool. The next tool is what sets this tool apart, this knife apart, and that is the driver. This was my first experience with both of these tools, the Cybertool M and the Cybertool L, and I got to tell you, I was really impressed with how strong these drivers are. Now, they lock into the 90. It's not really a firm lock in the 90. It's kind of just a little rest point, but they really lock in really well, fully extended. The downside of this is you can see how it's so offset. I wish they would have reworked this knife a little bit so that they got the driver more centered on the knife. I think it would have made it would just been better overall from a functionality standpoint. But the driver itself is really great. Now it has two sizes here for nut driver. It has a 4mm, which is the size of the drivers themselves, and then it has a 5mm out on the end. So you actually get two different drivers there, two different square or hexagonal drivers. And then integrated on the other side, you have the little bit holder, which is going to give you 8 bits in total, and they're going to use the ball detent with double-sided bits. You get a selection of, I think it was 3 different Phillips drivers. You get a number 2, a number 1, and an aught. And then I'll have to link these in or write these in because I don't remember exactly what, but you get 3 different Torx options, and then you also get a hex bit as well. So a decent selection of bits for this little driver. The only problem that I have with this is I think they should have added, I wish they had more bits. I wish so that people could kind of mix and match them put what works best for them. That's my only complaint about this driver system. But the driver system, that little driver is really impressive to me. I just don't know why, but it is solid. I just like that a lot, and I wish they had more knives actually. Then we get out to two of the tools that are pretty common to Victorinox. You got your flat driver with bottle cap lifter and wire stripper that will lock in both 90 and fully open positions. And then on the other side, you have the can opener with the 3mm flat driver. And Victorinox can openers work pretty good, really good actually. I'm going to be doing a test later to kind of see head to head who actually does have the better can opener in my opinion, but we'll see. On the back side, you have your awl, and then the all-purpose hook. And then this one also has the little driver here. And I think this one has the chisel too, if I'm not mistaken, or scraper chisel. It sure does right there. Same thing as the SwissChamp does. So that's a tool I really like. The only thing with this one is I wish it was down here and they switched positions, because I think, you see how far you have to kick over in order to use that? If it were on the first layer over here, it would be much more efficient. A little cumbersome to use because you have to use it like this, but I just think it's placed in the wrong place. Now you can always use it on the other side, but I just like the cutting edge or the angled edge on the top side for me, but to each their own. And then the next tool is the corkscrew with the little micro driver, and because these are plus scales, you get the little, well, he doesn't have it in here, you get the little stainless steel safety pin that integrates into the scale. And then on the scale tools, you have, oh my goodness, I knocked off his paint. That one, I'm so sorry about that. The paint just chipped right off of there. So you have your toothpick, you have your ballpoint pen, which I love this trick from Felix Emler. You just set it into the all-purpose hook, and then set that down, and now you've created a much more usable ballpoint pen. So a little trick I always like to show off. And then on the opposite side, you have our last tool, which is going to be the tweezers. And while I think there's stronger tweezers out there, it's always nice to have a little pair of tweezers. I guess if you include the key ring attachment here as a function, then you have that as well. Let's bring in the SwissChamp again, because I want to show you how really similar these two knives are. So down below we have the SwissChamp, and overall size, weight, everything like we talked about before is going to be pretty much on par with each of these, and they're both going to have the plus scale tools. The Champ that I have is in the standard Victorinox red, but I really like the translucent red or ruby scales that they have on the Cybertools. I like those translucent scales. They're just pretty. Now, I'll tell you what, let me open these up, and I'm going to show you what they took out of the Champ and added to the Cyber, just the differences between the two. All right, I've got these opened up, and every tool on the SwissChamp is identical to that of the Cybertool L, with the exception of what I've got pulled out here. So in the SwissChamp, what you lose in order to gain the functionality of the Cybertool L is you lose the inline number 2 Phillips, you lose the magnifying glass, and then this combination tool, which is the descaler, the little ruler, and the hook degorger. So that's 3, if you count the functions, you got 3, 4, and 5 different functions. In place of that, you add 10 functions. So actually this Cybertool L has 5 more functions by counting all the functions up than the SwissChamp, because now you've gained the 4 and 5 millimeter driver and then 8 different bits for a total of 10. So you lose 5 functions, gain 10, or gain 5 overall. The only one that I would miss in here is this driver. I love the fact that the SwissChamp has that inline Phillips. I just think it works better. It just having an inline Phillips as opposed to a Phillips on the backside in that T fashion. Apart from that, these are virtually identical, and while they're a little bulky, I could definitely see where it would be very useful in the tech industry. Now, personally, I don't know that I would carry this one. I really like the one we reviewed before, which was the Cybertool M. Now, it didn't have the functionality that everything that the Cybertool L does, obviously, because it's a smaller knife, but I think it's more pocket friendly. This one is not what I know people pocket carry this size of knives. A lot of people will pocket carry the Champ. I just think it's better in a sheath myself, but to each their own. This has been a look at the Cybertool L from Victorinox. That driver, I just can't get over how good that thing is. I'm really impressed by those. Thank you for watching. I appreciate all your views, and I will see you in the next one.